She tossed the red frisbee back. A bad toss. Casey chased after it, but it sailed away from him. Margaret looked up the golden hills beyond their backyard. California, she thought. It's so weird out here. Here it is, the middle of winter, and there isn't a cloud in the sky, and Casey and I are out in jeans and t-shirts as if it were the middle of summer. Hey now, don't let the mamas and the papas hear you bad-mouthing that sweet, sweet California weather. Yeah, that was a good opening joke. Yeah, okay. Oh, hello. Guess what? We finally reached the $200 Patreon goal, which means monthly Goosebumps reviews. Hello, you asked for it, and now the once-a-year Goosebumps reviews have become once-a-month Goosebumps reviews. If this is your first time with us, a little background. Despite technically being the right age for it, Goosebumps was never really my thing growing up. I only read a small handful of them back in the day. I know a few by reputation, but for most of these books, you get to go on a journey of discovery with me as I learn what R.L. Stine finds scary. I'm doing these in the order of publication, but I've done 6 before now that were selected by my viewers, which is why we're starting this off with book 2. If it seems like I skipped a book, it means I've probably already done it, so check for that. These reviews tend to be snarkier than my other videos. Goosebumps is really easy to make fun of. Just know that it's totally okay if you love them and or still love them. This is all in good fun and shouldn't be taken too seriously. So with that out of the way, Goosebumps number 2, Stay Out of the Basement. Based on these covers, it seems the basement is where Groot gets his nails done. So, things aren't going so great in the Brewer household. Dr. Brewer was fired from his job at Polytech, which based on the name makes space-aged polyester sweaters for polyamorous polywogs. I spent 7 years at the Comedy Store refining that joke. Dr. Brewer is a botanist, and since getting fired has been running experiments in the basement. He's become oddly distant, as noticed by his 2 children, Margaret and Casey. Margaret serves as our point of view character for the book. She felt sorry for Casey. He and their dad were really close, always playing ball or frisbee or video games together, but Dr. Brewer didn't seem to have time for that anymore. Jumping up to catch the frisbee, Margaret realized she felt sorry for herself too. Dad hadn't been the same to her either. In fact, he spent so much time down the basement, he barely said a word to her. He doesn't even call me Princess anymore, Margaret thought. It was a nickname she hated, but at least it was a nickname, a sign of closeness. To make matters worse, their aunt is in the hospital, meaning Mom Brewer has to fly down to Tucson, Arizona to be with her, leaving the kids alone with their now distant dad. When they try to enter the basement to see what Dr. Brewer is up to, he screams at them, ordering them to stay out of the basement. Title drop. He seems to have recently cut his hand, which might explain his snapping, but it still unsettles the kids. Then we cut to 2 weeks later. There's a lot of time skips in this book, and I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's also not necessary for the plot at all. So 2 weeks later, Dr. Brewer leaves the house while Margaret's friend Diane is visiting. Diane wonders what wild experiments might be going on, and eventually talks Margaret and Casey into letting her into the basement. They discover basically a mini rainforest, with heavy humidity and strange jungle-like plants with hanging vines. The kids goof off a bit. Casey takes off his shirt. Chris Hansen comes into my house and asks why a man in his early 30s is reading about shirtless boys, but the kids start to freak out when they hear something that sounds like heavy breathing. Dr. Brewer pulls up and the kids dash out of the basement, only to realize they left Casey's shirt down there, so they rush back down. But this time Casey gets tangled up in the vines. It's as if they'd reached out and grabbed him. By the time he breaks free, it's too late. Dad's found out. Dr. Brewer is cold, but he doesn't yell at his kids, nor does he explain what's going on down there, just promising that he'll tell them someday. Jump ahead another week. Margaret calls her mom in Arizona and tries to explain how distant Dad's being, but this is a children's story, which means the parents will never believe you kids, so don't even try to tell them what the babysitter does when they're not looking. The middle portion of this book is a series of incidences that you could do in mostly any order, each pushing the idea that Dr. Brewer is becoming weirder and more plant-like. First, Margaret catches him eating plant food in the kitchen. Then, while the kids are playing frisbee, they toss it to their dad, which knocks off a baseball cap he'd been wearing the last several weeks, revealing green, leafy plants where his hair should be. "Come here, you two," their father said softly, putting an arm around each of their shoulders. "Let's sit down in the shade over there and have a talk. I spoke to your mom on the phone this morning. She told me you're upset about my work." "Your head, it's all green," Casey repeated. "I know," Dr. Brewer said, smiling. "That's why I put on the cap. I didn't want you two to worry." "Well, kids, I knew this day would come. It's time I told you about our Chia pet lineage." Dr. Brewer tries to reassure the kids that this is a temporary side effect to his work, and implies that his work involves crossbreeding plants, and more frequently, crossbreeding plants with animals. If I have one major issue with this book, is that it doesn't use this opportunity to throw in a bunch of plant-animal puns. I want a scene where all these creatures parade out of the basement, armadillos and crabbages and grizzly pears. This goes some way in calming the kids down. Some questions have been answered, but also their dad is meddling in God's domain, so give or take. This doesn't put an end to the creepy dad stuff. Margaret sees Dr. Brewer in the bathroom tending to his cut, except his blood is green. "Vulcan, your dad's a secret Vulcan!" Then she discovers the bed in the master bedroom is covered in dirt and writhing with worms. Seems a bit careless to allow your kids to come into your bedroom like this, but I suppose stay out of the basement and also the bedroom would have taken up too much room on the cover. Finally, Dr. Brewer attempts to feed the kids a weird green goop and won't tell them what it is. "Come on, kids, no Nintendo until you've eaten all your poison." The day is saved when Mr. Martinez, Dr. Brewer's old boss from Polytech, makes an unexpected visit. However it went down in the lab, Martinez still appreciates Dr. Brewer and his work and wants to check up on him. Dr. Brewer leads Martinez into the basement, and the kids lose track of the situation, assuming Martinez left when they weren't looking. Alarmed by everything that's been going on, the kids decide to break into the basement. They got their chance the next afternoon when their father emerged from the basement, red metal tool chest in hand. "I promised Mr. Henry next door I would help him install a new sink in his bathroom," he explained, adjusting his Dodgers cap with his free hand. "You know, for an evil, half-plant mad scientist, Dr. Brewer's not a bad guy." So Dad leaves, and Margaret and Casey slip into stealth mode. She tried the door, locked as usual. "No problem," Casey said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Go get a paperclip. I'll show you what my friend Kevin taught me last week." Margaret obediently found a paperclip on her desk and brought it to him. Casey straightened the clip out, then poked it into the lock. In a few seconds, he hummed a triumphant fanfare and pulled the door open. "Sure, whatever. This is a book about plant monsters. I suppose I could let children teaching each other how to pick locks with a paperclip slide." Jeez, that was easy. It's harder to pick locks in Skyrim. The kids sneak into the basement and receive a jump scare with a squirrel that got in through an open window. Then they find Mr. Martinez's suit, jacket, and tie. Did Martinez leave it behind? Or did he leave it all? They decide enough is enough and confront Dr. Brewer about it. And their dad just says that Martinez got hot in the basement, took off the jacket, and forgot about it when he left. Another 47 weeks pass, and finally Mom is flying home. Dr. Brewer leaves for the airport, while Margaret and Casey decide to fly kites. The only problem, the kites are in the basement. So they go down there and search through some shelves, only to discover the rest of Martinez's stuff. His pants, his shoes, his wallet, his condoms. Condoms! There's a boarded up closet that has had noises coming from it this whole time, so the kids decide to pry that open, only to discover Caligula's greenhouse. They both gaped at the weird plants that filled the closet. Were they plants? Under the dim ceiling bulb, they bent and writhed, groaning, breathing, sighing. Branches shook, leaves shimmered and moved. Tall plants leaned forward as if reaching out to Margaret and Casey. "Look at that one," Casey cried, taking a step back. "It has an arm." "Oh!" Margaret followed Casey's stare. Casey was right. The tall leafy plant appeared to have a green human arm descending from its stalk. Margaret's eyes darted around the closet. To her horror, she realized that several plants seemed to have human features. Green arms, a yellow hand with 3 fingers poking from it, 2 stumpy legs where the stem should be. She and her brother both cried out when they saw a plant with a face. Inside a cluster of broad leaves, there appeared to grow a round, green tomato. But the tomato had a human-shaped nose and an open mouth, from which it repeatedly uttered the most mournful sighs and groans. Another plant, A short plant with clusters of broad oval leaves had two green, nearly human faces partially hidden by the leaves, both wailing through open mouths. Okay, that's genuinely unsettling. In the way it was intended. Going further into the closet, the kids discover Dr. Brewer. Another Dr. Brewer, naked and tied up, also sporting plant hair, along with a naked and tied up Martinez. They free this version of their father just as the other version shows up with mom. So the story here is that Dr. Brewer was working on his latest gene splicing plant experiments when he sliced his hand and got some of his own DNA into the mixture while getting the mixture into his cut. The result, Dr. Brewer growing plant hair and a plant-based clone springing into existence. But who's the real Dr. Brewer and who's the clone? Margaret ends up grabbing an axe to defend herself. Thank goodness, Dr. Brewer with the Dodgers cap exclaimed. We gotta get him back in the closet. He's very dangerous. He stepped up to Margaret. Give me the axe. Margaret hesitated. Give me the axe, he insisted. Margaret turned to her mother. What should I do? Mrs. Brewer shrugged helplessly. I don't know. Princess, don't do it, the capless Dr. Brewer said softly, staring into Margaret's eyes. He called me princess, Margaret realized. Oh, neat, you got me, Goosebumps. That was a damn good setup and payoff. I didn't know you had it in ya. You established the princess thing early, you gave a reminder halfway through the book, I didn't quote that part, and then it plays off here as the means in which Margaret realizes which of them is the real dad. Now that's just solid bedrock storytelling there, and I have to applaud it for... What's that? What's that? Oh, they ignore the princess thing and come up with another way to learn who's the real dad? Well, that's a bummer. Basically, Margaret cuts both Dr. Brewers to discover Closet Dad bleeds red while Hat Dad bleeds green. And look, if this was a real-life situation, I would be glad for the extra step. I wouldn't want my dad's life determined by if he used a certain childhood nickname or not. But this isn't real life. This is a fanciful horror book. Don't create a setup and waste it like that. Well, yeah, Closet Dad is real dad. He takes the axe and brutally murders Hat Dad, slicing him in half and revealing his gross plant innards. And the day is saved. The real Dr. Brewer reunites with his family, he promises to destroy his experiments, and Martinez is freed. All seems right with the world. But this is a Goosebumps book, so we gotta have that twist ending. The smile faded from her face when she heard a whisper at her feet. Margaret! She looked down to see a small yellow flower nudging her ankle. Margaret, the flower whispered. Help me. Please help me. I'm your father. Really, I'm your real father. Ah, Dad Fidels. So, you might have been wondering why I didn't make the obvious jokes about Dr. Brewer being in the closet. The final couple of chapters is all about, oh no, he's out of the closet, and we gotta put him back in the closet, and he's nude with another man in the closet. It's not because I'm above easy jokes like that, but because I think it might have been intentional subtext. Listen, I will admit that the sample size of Goosebumps books I've taken so far is very small. I know that there's still many horrible, cringe-inducing wonders ahead of me, but of the 7 books I've read for this channel, this is the first where its horrors have tapped into an anxiety that is largely exclusive to children. Typically, children trust their parents. They are the primary sources of food, shelter, entertainment, and love. Children depend on their parents completely. Even if it's not actually a great household, children usually don't fully comprehend why that is. They just go on loving their parents unless there's some serious abuse going on. But what happens when you start to realize that maybe your parents aren't the people you thought they were? What happens when the shine starts to wear off, and the person you loved so much when you were 5 is starting to seem less lovable when you're 10? What if the two parents start to become estranged from each other? What if divorce is on the horizon and you can't really comprehend why? Maybe your dad is hiding something. This is a very child-exclusive anxiety, a feeling of becoming aware of adult complexities while not being able to fully comprehend those complexities because, well, you're not an adult yet. And this is an anxiety that Stay Out of the Basement seems to be tapping into. Why has our dad grown distant? Why does he lock himself away from us? Why doesn't he call me princess anymore? Was it something I did? The mom leaving is convenient for the plot, yes, but it also reflects those moments when parents have to spend time apart for reasons not discussed with the kids. Most Goosebumps books, at least the ones I've read, just pit the kids against monsters or evil curses. And yeah, there can be metaphor in that, but it's often just a weird physical threat. This is the first time one of these books has felt relevant to childhood experiences. There actually isn't much of a physical threat to the kids here. The only time Plant Dad seems to threaten the actual livelihood of Margaret and Casey is when he tries to get them to eat that weird goop. But that can be written off as Plant Dad confused as to how to feed his surrogate children. In fact, Plant Dad is weird and distant and effectively positioned as the book's antagonist, but he's not that bad of a guy. He's a weeks-old genetically modified plant magically given sentience, a human body, and the echoes of an existing human identity through a science mix-up, and he's trying to take care of these kids the best he can. He feeds them. He actually has a few tender moments trying to play the role of the parent. He even goes out of the way to help a neighbor install a sink. He didn't have to, but Plant Dad is trying to live up to some kind of standards. Yeah, he eats plant food, he bleeds green, and he sleeps on worms, but that's not hurting anybody. Okay, sure, he knocks out real Dad and Martinez, strips them of their clothes, and stuffs them in a closet, but what would you do if you were suddenly created and your existence was immediately threatened? He could have killed them, but he didn't. I don't think it's right to take Plant Dad as just the monster of the month. So what does he stand for? Well, he stands for the opposite of what the naked man in the closet stands for. I think this book can be taken as a metaphorical tale of a father struggling with his homosexuality, conflicted between his life as the father of a traditional heteronormative family and his gay identity. When you consider the story from that angle, a lot of things start to add up. Mrs. Brewer may say she's leaving to look after her sister, but if you just found out that your husband was gay, you may want to fly to Arizona for a bit too. The reason Dr. Brewer was fired from Polytech is never given, but this book was published in 1992, and, well, employment protections for LGBT individuals was not the strongest thing at the time, even in California. Plant Dad is Brewer's heterosexual facade, a suit that doesn't quite fit. He tries his best to be what society thinks he should be, but in reality, he's an empty illusion of a person. Real Dad is a naked man trapped in a closet with his boyfriend from work. Real Dad loves his children, loves them deeply, he wants to be part of their lives, calls them silly nicknames, but he's stopped by his heterosexual facade. Is this the author's intended meaning? Who knows, probably not, but it still works, and that's what matters. Well, surely Scholastics wouldn't let this fly, right? Dude, have you seen what Everworld is getting away with? Is it a stretch? In a world where the Babadook is a gay icon for some reason? Not really. If it wasn't clear by how into this I'm getting, I actually really liked Stay Out of the Basement. I know, hell of a way to start off this series. I promise, I don't usually like these books. I would have tweaked a few things, actually had the princess thing pay off like it was set up to do, but I'm impressed with the childhood anxieties it taps into and the complexity of its antagonist. It's a smarter horror story than any of the other Goosebumps books I've read, and that's even before my pet queer reading. I give Stay Out of the Basement a weed whacker out of 10.